Good evening, America. This week your president crossed the Atlantic to pay us here in Britain a visit. And it was no ordinary visit, it was a state visit. In fact, it was his second state visit to the United Kingdom. And a state visit is, for the British, an occasion for ceremony and pageantry. It's perhaps seen in America as a little archaic, possibly curious and even a little eccentric, but nonetheless impressive. And for us, it's an opportunity to roll out the best that we have. During a state visit, Britain likes to lay on all the pageantry that we can muster. Not only for the guest, but you'd also be right to assume that it reminds ourselves that we still know how to put on a show. And this state visit was certainly no exception. I imagine that for many of you watching President Trump with the King, inspecting the Guard of Honour comprised of the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards and the Scots Guards, who many people don't realise are in fact fully trained combat soldiers as well as being the guards of the royal household. And watching the carriages, the rows of scarlet uniforms, the Guards of Honour, the gold braid, the household cavalry resplendent in their polished cuirasses and plumed helmets mounted on their thoroughbred military horses, was a strong confirmation of the so-called special relationship. Of course, the term special relationship was coined by Sir Winston Churchill, 85 years ago, to describe the special and unique association between our two peoples. And the welcome that the 47th President of the United States received this week was designed to just demonstrate to you just how much the British value that association. The pageantry was unmatched. A greater number of soldiers from the Household Division paraded for Donald Trump this week than for any other head of state before him. The scarlet tunics, the medals, the swords flashed, the bands played, and for a day Britain presented itself as a nation strong, tall, confident and grounded in centuries of deep tradition and custom, which of course we are. But if the spectacle caught your eye, perhaps the substance lay elsewhere. These visits are not only an assertion of close, familial even, associations between our two nations. They are, as is ensured by government officials on both sides of the Atlantic who arrange these things, both diplomatically and politically highly pragmatic. For President Trump did not travel to Great Britain alone. He brought with him the bosses of some of America's greatest tech companies, Nvidia, OpenAI, Apple. And they too were invited to dine in lavish style at the state banquet hosted by King Charles at Windsor Castle. One of the outcomes of this visit, therefore, was that Britain secured a landmark agreement. Billions of dollars of American investment in artificial intelligence data centres across the United Kingdom. $31 billion to be precise, part of a much bigger $150 billion package of investment by US companies in the United Kingdom. So it was a high-tech, big finance deal agreed under the umbrella of ancient royal ceremony. Yet beneath both the pomp and the politics lay something a lot more awkward. Not about you, not about your president, but about us. For in Britain today, the political climate is uncertain, polarised. Economic realities and immigration create great anxieties. Opinions are divided and acrimonious. And while the British are known for their grumbling, we're also known for our resilience and our optimism. Ask any Englishman how he is, and you're most likely to get the answer, well, could be worse. But society in Britain is uncomfortable with itself at the moment. We're divided and uncertain of ourselves, and importantly, perhaps not so obviously, we're uncertain of our place in the world. The British have a way of muddling through, though. But until we do, the visit of your president and other such visits are not so much about you and your president as about us. Politics in America could, of course, also be described as polarised and acrimonious, but our challenges on this side of the pond feel unique, even if they are not. Here, to welcome President Trump's visit, whilst also supporting so-called progressive immigration policies and campaigning to rejoin the European Union, as many do, is a contradiction that those, particularly on the left, seem unable to resolve and reconcile. Likewise, for those on the right, it's difficult to welcome American investment whilst insisting that Britain can and must stand wholly alone. These contradictions, on both wings if you like, sit uneasily in Britain. Some of us indeed want to believe that we can stand alone as we have done for many centuries. But it's also necessary to remember that we all need family and friends sometimes. None of us want to be entirely alone in this world as individuals or as nations. President Trump's visit proved that the British are well able to both boo and cheer in the same breath, but it also reminded us, awkwardly, uncomfortably, that when practical contradictions force us into making political choices, we grow deeply unsettled. So this week became a mirror. President Trump's visit reflected our own views and our divisions back at us. Our pride and our anxiety, our longing for independence and our need for partnership, our love of pageantry and our suspicion of politics. Perhaps I could also liken Britain and America to brothers who quarrel sometimes. Perhaps we quarrel because we sometimes envy each other slightly. We, the elder brother who feels both proud and uneasy that our younger sibling has grown much bigger, much more wealthy than us, whilst we have grown older and perhaps slower. But we still respect you immensely for what you have become and what you have achieved. We are genuinely proud of you, even if we are occasionally critical. On the other hand, we also occasionally and unintentionally make you feel awkward because you can't necessarily replicate, in fact, it would be unreasonable to expect you to, the depth that our history gives to our traditions and customs. And you don't quite understand, given how relatively small these islands are and our limited resources, how we have ever achieved what we did. So perhaps I can reflect on that and suggest that the strength we share rests in ourselves and our relationship. In other words, it rests in our people, in our shared character and fortitude, rather than the size and history of our two great nations. And the fact is, we always have been, and we always will be, there for each other. We are family. And we're also, even if slightly envious and uncomfortable because your success reflects and reminds us of our own decline and failings, dearly fond of you, even if we don't like to admit it. And we hope you are of us. So perhaps it can be said that our relationship is at once familial, but also slightly competitive. We tease, we complain, we mock, we criticise, and yet when you come to say, we will always polish the silver beforehand. This week we did more than that. We did more than polish the silver. We mustered the grandest parade for any head of state in history. Even if here on this side of the Atlantic we were arguing about amongst ourselves about what it actually meant, we rolled out the red carpet in grand British style. And that, America, is the story of your president's visit. The spectacle, the deal, the paradox of a country that remains both proud and unsure, affectionate and exasperated, independent, yet bound to its core to a very special people, those of the United States of America. Good night.
That was Letter to America by Henry Bolton. For further episodes, please follow or subscribe. Thank you.